start the recording, and we would get started. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Orit Kalman, and I am a facilitator with SAC State Consensus and Collaboration Program, and supporting the DWR team in this engagement effort. The purpose of the meeting today is really to, as required by Executive Order N722, is to solicit input from water use efficiency leaders in commercial, industrial, and institutional sector on strategies that have been identified to improve water conservation. And throughout this workshop today, we hope that we can engage all of you in conversation to help inform the development of proposed DWR direct install programs for turf conversion and replacement and indoor fixture retrofits and other conservation strategies that we hope to identify with you today. So with that in mind, just a couple of logistical things, and we'll get started. Want to just remind everyone that we have live captioning and streaming on YouTube. I will put the link in if you have colleagues who would also want to listen in, especially for the first half of the workshop, you can do so. It's a remote workshop, and we will be going into breakouts later, and it's a large group of participants. So as we are used to remote meetings by now, still sometime it could take a little time. And so I ask for your patience and flexibility as we move through the different agenda items today. We want to see you and hear you today. We really want to engage and hear about your experience and understand from you about opportunities that are there for conservation. But please make sure that your mic is muted while we are presenting, and use your video on when you're speaking and during the breakout session. For your participation, feel free to provide input through the chat channel or use the hand raise. We are going to create a workshop summary, and so make sure that you participate in all these different ways, and we'll collect all your input throughout. And I see there is a comment that the YouTube is not working yet, so I'll check on it once we get started. And with that, just to kind of set the stage for our conversation today, I'd like to invite Chris Chernell, who's the Deputy Director of the Integrated Watershed Management Program with DWR, to provide some welcoming remarks.
Great. Thanks, Reed. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your participation in this. It's really a tremendous turnout from the CII sector and other interested individuals and entities, and we're really overwhelmed in the best of ways with that interest and participation. So again, thank you and welcome. Really looking forward to a rich conversation throughout the day today. As Orit mentioned, I'm Chris Chernell, Deputy Director for Integrated Watershed Management at the California Department of Water Resources. I oversee a number of different areas, but the water use efficiency team is amongst those, and they are really the backbone of so much of the effort from our department's engagement here. We're certainly looking forward to a robust and meaningful conversation with some real next steps and outcomes from this conversation today. And it really does take all of us working together, of course, beyond just the cliche and the trope of we're all in this together. It really is true. So again, really appreciate your engagement. But what that does not mean, what being in this together does not mean, is that we all have the same roles and responsibilities and capacities and opportunities for making change. And so as we, DWR certainly, are going into this discussion today, what we are going to this mindset, we're going to this meeting with a mindset of, so what really is the state's role in this conversation, in advancing water use efficiency in the CII sector across the state? We can't do everything. nor can any one of you. And so how are we going to be recognizing our limitations, our authorities, and really what is that band of influence that we as a state can, and I would argue must, employ in the service of this objective of greater water use efficiency across the state. And in the service of answering that question, we're really looking for your engagement, your active engagement, your feedback today, your ideas, your concepts, your creativity, your imagination, and really your professional expertise. Is we want to hear from you how the state, working within our relatively narrow but important band of authority and opportunity, funding availability, things along those lines, how we can help you make the biggest change, and vice versa. So really, that to me is such a clear nugget that is worth spending time on, and it really is how the day is focused throughout the agenda. So again, I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Again, really so pleased and again, overwhelmed in the best of ways by the response today. It's really a tremendous turnout, and looking forward to seeing what comes of it. Thanks again for your participation, and let's jump in.
Great, thank you, Chris. And as we're moving forward in this conversation, really highlighting the urgency that we find ourselves in, and the importance of the partnership between the state and local, want to keep that as a two-way conversation. Want to share the agenda with you for today. We are going to focus the first part of the workshop on this, just kind of setting the stage for the conversation. We'll hear from DWR, providing an overview of Executive Order N722 as it's applicable to the topic that we're discussing today, and DWR's initial thinking that they're bringing to the conversation today around CII sector conservation strategies. We are also fortunate to have with us, we've invited some speakers who can share more of a local perspective, spotlighting conservation opportunities, and really looking to hear from them and just kind of get the conversation started, thinking about opportunities, challenges that we need to overcome and think about, and really thinking about outreach and communication in terms of getting to implementation of these conservation strategies. We'll take a short break so we can kind of shift gears. And when we come back at 10:30, we are going to have a breakout session. We're really turning to you to provide us your experience, your thoughts about key questions, which we will come back to in a bit. And we'll have time for a report out and a wrap up to end the meeting at 12 today. And just to say that as this is a consultation, so to speak, it's an opportunity for you to share information with DWR. It's really also an opportunity for us as a community to come together and learn from each other and see what is happening throughout the state, and how we can learn and leverage this knowledge to be successful. So we're hoping that you all will stay with us and participate in the breakouts. We've shared a template in the announcement, and we'll come back to it. And so whether or not you're able to participate in the breakout, we hope you can use the template, which I will share a link with again, and give us your feedback and input, all to be collated and shared with participants after the meeting. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Arthur Hinojosa, who's the Director of Division of Regional Assistance with DWR, to provide an overview and set the foundation for our conversation today.
Thank you, Ray. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. So in a nutshell, just to start us off, why are we here? Earlier this spring, Governor Newsom issued Executive Order N722. And amongst the provisions therein, directed the department, next slide, quite explicitly to promote water conservation, consult with you, the leaders of the CII, commercial, industrial, and institutional sectors to develop strategies for improving water conservation. And they specifically wanted us to call out direct technical assistance, financial assistance, and other approaches. So we thought about different ways of achieving this, calling up certain folks, assembling a team of old that was used in the last drought. But it entailed, making a lot of decisions, trying to, we didn't want to be the pick and chooser. Ultimately, we thought, let's just open this up and invite as many folks from the sectors as want to participate, so that we get as broad perspective as possible. It's a very diverse state, very large state, and we felt that only through this open forum could we truly get a chance at hearing all the different perspectives. In terms of what we mean by strategies, from my perspective, it's just that, how can we, as the department in the state of California, help everyone see ways forward to help us conserve water. We're in our third year of drought, pretty bad drought so far. We're expecting, for nothing other than prudence sake, that next year will be dry as well. I say prudence sake is, prepare for the worst, hope for the best sort of thing. No climate model can predict exactly what's going to happen. We've had super wet La Nina years, we've had super dry La Nina years, and it's expected that this will be a La Nina year. So what does it mean? Well, we're just going to assume it's going to stay dry. And even if it doesn't, it's in our interest as a state to be as conservative as possible with our water use, make water conservation a way of life. And that includes all sectors. And so irrespective of drought, it makes sense to have these strategies to make the most of our precious resource. Next slide. So what do we hope to come out of this? Well, one of the things we like to focus on is how do we improve access to funding and other benefits to the underrepresented communities and tribes. There's CII sectors across the state. The larger, wealthier communities often are at the forefront of developing things, but not every community can benefit from that sort of resource. So how can we as a state help support those that haven't had that benefit? As with any emergency, it always starts local, and water use is, by and far governed at the local level more than any other. So how do we continue to promote local accountability? By and large, the state of California does do well conserving water, but there are areas where it's not as strong as it could be. And being able to leverage all of your knowledge such that everyone can understand and apply what works best for them at the local level is a big part of what we hope to get from this. And likewise, how do we actually know we're doing what we hope to do, whether it's an investment in time or energy and influence or financial? How do we report out that we're making progress so that we can revisit things that work or don't work, and leverage those that do? And then ultimately, are we saving water? Is it making are we making progress with our water savings? Are we making the water go farther and using it as efficiently as we can? Next slide. So some of the things we've already thought of, but whether these are the right things, whether there are considerations for them that we haven't yet realized or would like to learn more about. Turf is a big one in this state. So, are there ways of not just removing turf, but maybe replacing turf in ways that where we still want or need turf? Are there ways of finding turf or putting in turf that is more water use effective? And then other places, do we really need that large swath of grass that just sits there looking pretty in front of some building that otherwise never sees feet except for the people mowing it? Maybe there's a better use of that space in ways that are still as appealing and for the environment as well as the eye, but perhaps use less water. But there seems to always be ways of improving the effectiveness of our fixtures. New buildings usually benefit greatly from the latest technology, but older ones, there's cost and time and impact affected with replacement. So what other things can we be doing to improve the fixtures inside our facilities? And then training and technical assistance as well. How can we provide folks the information and the help they need to make changes to improve water use efficiency? And then what are we missing? What other strategies are out there? We know about leak detection and improved metering. Are there pilot studies that we could support to help us understand or investigate some ideas or technology that maybe isn't at the forefront yet? These are things that we're thinking, but we want your feedback. Do any of these make sense? To what extent? How should they be couched? How should they be implemented? How are things already working well for others that we could share with the greater community? Next slide. Unless we not put our money where our mouth is, and I mean that literally, the state has in the governor's budget allocated monies for water conservation, specifically about $175 million. And those come into 3 pots that have been allocated to the department. 75 million for turf replacement, another 100 million for water conservation. And those are parsed out, 75 into the urban supplier sector, 25 million into the small supplier sector. And we still need to decide exactly how to avail those funds and put them to use. It is our hope to leverage this workshop to help us inform how that might come to be. We're looking at 2 major approaches: grants, which most of you might be familiar with. The department is versed at administering. That is providing opportunity for folks to ask for grants to do various things in the water conservation world. We're also looking at direct assistance, where we might employ groups or companies to do work at others' needs at our request. So what that split will look like, how that is going to be rolled out is yet to be officially decided. We've got ideas. We want to inform those ideas with the input from this workshop. Next slide. So let's get to it. Back to Orit to keep us moving along, and hopefully you'll all learn something, garner something you can take back with you, and then contribute to our wealth of knowledge that we can all benefit from.
Great, thank you, Art. And as you were just highlighting those 4 strategies, plus an opportunity to really add to it, what we have done to just kind of get the conversation started, we've identified some individuals who have done some work related to those strategies and asked them to come and share a little bit of information. And I see some of you are already adding information in the chat. Really appreciate it. Keep your comments coming, and we'll have opportunity for more discussion in a little bit. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce each of our presenters. We've asked them to spend about 5 to 7 minutes to just highlight a specific program that they've implemented, talk a little bit about lessons learned, what they've learned from it, things that we can be thinking about as we're thinking more broadly about other opportunities for conservation strategies. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who's Krista Guerrero. And Krista has been part of the water efficiency team for Metropolitan Water District for the last 4 years, and has been working in water conservation for over 20 years. As the nation's largest wholesaler of water, Metropolitan is in a unique position to implement CII conservation program at a regional level, encompassing all types of businesses and industries. Metropolitan works closely with its member agencies and local partners to provide innovative programming and outreach to the CII sector. So thanks, Krista, for joining us today. And I'll move the slides for you.
Thank you, Orit. Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be here today to highlight one of the programs that Metropolitan has for our commercial customers, really for our member agencies, commercial customers. Next slide. Very quickly, I'm sure most of you do know who we are, but we are, as Orit said, the nation's largest wholesaler of water. We cover 6 counties, 5,200 square miles, and provide water to about 19 million people through our imported water supply from the Colorado River and the State Water Project. Next slide. Trying to talk fast. We only have a little bit of time. You can go ahead and advance. So our water savings incentive program is our pay for performance program. Sorry, or you're gonna have to click through a little bit. There you go. It is a program that we have that incentivizes non-residential customized projects. So we're really looking at businesses as a whole and understanding how they use water, where they use water, and what are the ways for these businesses to use less water than they were. That could include retrofitting existing equipment, improving processes, even hiring contract for water management services. For example, CLCA's certified water managers, we will pay a portion of contracts to hire them to make sure that any of their outdoor irrigation stays on budget. The goals of the program when we set it out were to make sure that we did reach those commercial customers and create a way to incentivize custom projects that, just a straight rebate wasn't going to work. And we wanted to make sure that there were long-term water management practices as part of a standard business practice. Water management being built into and water efficiency being built into the way that these companies work. Next slide. Again, sorry. So the way that it works, it's a 60 cent per 1,000 gallons saved per year, and we are trying to get 10 years of saving. So over the life of the project, about 10,000 gallons saved. We do limit it to 50% of the eligible project cost. So it is a cost share program. Next, click ahead. There you go. The payments are phased. So there is a monitoring that has to occur after the project is finished so that we can see how much water was actually saved. And then we base that final payment on that amount. If there is enough engineering plans, we can do single payments. Click ahead. But we also will pay up front for a portion of it if we have enough information. Next slide. So some of the eligible costs for the program, click ahead. Sorry, I shouldn't have done it this way. It does have to directly pertain to project installation or water management services, such as engineering, software, hardware, any of the materials that could include plants if it's an outdoor project, third-party labor, again, those water management services, things that are not part of it, click ahead. Any direct labor from staff, purchasing land, permitting costs, fees, those kinds of items are not part of our program. Next slide. So I wanted to just run through a couple of example projects so you can see what we're talking about here. You can click ahead to see both. So one is the pump pod drafts unit. We've actually had several fire departments in our service area purchase these pump pod units. We've saved approximately 171 acre feet with each of them, and the payout that they get as part of their incentive is about $36,000. We have a project with Altman Specialty Plants where they were able to capture, treat, and reuse their nursery runoff. And this saved a great amount of 3,421 acre feet of water. And we gave them just under $500,000 for that project. Next slide. We had a large landscape project with the Botanic Garden, and it's a replacement and upgrade of their irrigation system. We included smart controllers. They put in drip, high efficiency spray, flow sensors, rain sensors. They replaced master valves. I really like this project because this was all upgrades and changes they needed to make anyway. And we were able to assist them with that and make sure that they did it as efficiently as possible. There were about 16 irrigated acres that they handled for this. We estimated a water savings about 213 million gallons over the 10 years, which is about 650 acre feet per year. And the incentive that we paid out was just over $140,000. Next slide. We had a large commercial laundry project, so moving indoor to a process. They installed a wastewater treatment recycling system so they could reuse up to 75% of their process water. They replaced their older washers with larger tunnel washers to increase their wash capacity. And this is important. I'm going to show you in the next slide why that's important. The final project cost was just over $1 million. We calculated a water savings of about 196 million gallons over the 10 years, which is about a 40% reduction in the amount of water. This process used a lot of water. And we paid out about $120,000 for our incentive, which come out to a project unit cost of about $198 per acre foot, which is great for us. Next slide. Okay. So if you, sorry, you have to click through. And again, and one more. There we go. Okay. So just wanted to show you quickly how the water savings looked for this project, you'll notice in the blue line that total gallons used, it doesn't look like a huge reduction, but as I said before, they actually increased their capacity when they went through this process. So if you see the gray line of that gallons per pound, that was cut almost in half. So with a larger capacity, they were still using less water per pound than they were previously, which is great. An excellent example of efficient use within a large commercial laundry factory. Next slide, please. Also, another project to highlight is an industrial chemical manufacturing plant that we worked with. They installed equipment to capture and treat their RO rejects and to return their permeate to the primary RO feed. So their final project cost was about $450,000. We calculated a water savings of 450 million gallons over the 10 years, which was about a 14% reduction. And our incentive was just over $240,000. And this one had a great unit cost of $177 per acre foot, which is less than the $195 per acre foot that we use for our standard and rebates. And next slide. So this chart, I just want to focus you in on the orange and the yellow lines down at the bottom. So that orange line, you see that drop significantly after the project was put in place due to more cycles of concentration when they made those changes. And this is a perfect example of why submeters are so important, because it was only through the use of several submeters that we were able to see this kind of change and track this water change. And then that gray line, which was 0 before, now we're seeing all those water savings, and the same for the total water saved, which is the yellow. And so if you have any other questions or want any more information on our program, my contact information is there. I've also included the contact information for my coworker, Gary Tilkian, who actually runs this program. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you're interested in this type of program for your area.
Great, thanks, Krista. Really appreciate your presentation. And I'm noticing in the chat that participants are adding information and questions and resources, and really appreciate that. So keep all that going. We're going to go through all the presentations that we have, and as time allows at the end, we'll come back to some questions. So our next presenter is Stephanie Dewar. Stephanie has been with Salt Lake City Department of Public Utilities since 2001, when she was hired to create, manage, and grow a water conservation program for the utility service area, the most populated, industrialized, and commercialized metropolitan center in Utah. Previous to joining public utilities, Stephanie worked in the landscape industry as a designer and contractor for residential and commercial water-wise landscapes in Northern California, Colorado, Nebraska, and Utah. She's also worked as a high school teacher and campaign and grassroots organizers. And besides working for the Salt Lake City, she also teaches adult ed classes through the University of Utah Lifelong Learning. Thanks for being with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate. I'm out in Salt Lake City, Utah, though I am originally from California, from the Santa Cruz, San Francisco area. So I always watch what's going on out there. You guys do a really good job and help us set the tone in the West. So I'm sharing today, and all right, if you would forward the slide, I'm just sharing briefly about a program we have. We're facing the same water shortages as other states are in the West. Salt Lake City is well positioned in that we're very, very close to our water supply, and we, because we've been here so long, over 150 years, we have we own a great deal of our water supply. We live very close to it. We have an aggressive watershed protection program, but reservoir storage is still very much down. Our snowpack was considerably below average. Runoff has been below average. So conservation is critical. We've done major planning processes, including supply and demand planning, major conveyance and distribution planning, conservation and drought planning. And based on those, we know we need to reduce, if we focus on the residential sector for this presentation and the commercial sector, we need to reduce outdoor water use from an average of about 36 inches a season to less than 20 inches a season. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. But we also want to make sure that our programs don't create new problems. And that's been a very important focus of our program development over the years. And I noticed even in the chats, people talking about what about alternative lawns, and I know Arthur mentioned it as well. One of the things we're looking at doing is doing a turf trade program. So rather than having a turf removal program where people put in rock or gravel, we're looking at providing alternative turfs. And we worked with the Turfgrass Water Conservation Alliance and with Utah State University and asked them to help identify an ideal grass blend or mix that could help us replace the traditional Kentucky bluegrass in our region. We're a high enough elevation that we could support some grass. We don't have to have no grass if we just selected a better grass and watered it more appropriately. The result of this collaboration between the TWCA and USU was to identify a blend. It's a fine tall fescue and bluegrass blend that uses 30% less water as a minimum than the traditional Kentucky bluegrass. And we've begun a pilot program. Our initial expenditure for our pilot program was $18,000, but this actually included installation at a utility site. We have a sewer pump station in a residential neighborhood, and we redid the landscape and the irrigation and replaced the existing 8,000 square feet of lawn with less than 3,000 square feet now of this, our new turf trade grass. The cost also includes our seed, how-to videos, yard signs, and flyers. One of the things we know from our studies is that we have about 30 to 40% capacity to conserve water within our existing landscapes. So if we can capture that conservation and then also have people change out their lawns to this alternative lawn, we can exceed our short and long-term outdoor water conservation goals across our community, and at the same time not add to heat island effect and still be able to support our urban forest, which is critical to our both sustainability and walkability of our community. For instance, the last 2 weeks we've had temperatures well over the high 90s and into the hundreds, and our urban forest is critical in helping with livability. Even in our west side, which is a lower income area, neighborhoods, they're heavily forested. So removing all lawn, telling people not to water would have incredible negative impacts to that urban forest. So finding an alternative lawn is really helpful. This program is focused initially on residential customers, though we're getting ready to expand it to our commercial customers as well. Additionally, we're working with our golf courses and parks to find other alternative grasses. In our golf courses, we've been replacing rough and naturalized area turf with a crested wheatgrass blend that requires only one watering a month and only one mowing a season. We identified this grass with a partnership of the United States Department of Agriculture. And it's been really successful, and it's received good positive comments from golf users and also neighbors, the residential neighborhoods that are within that see these spaces. So finding alternative turfs is a very, it's an important program for us at this point because it supports not only our conservation programming, but other key environmental programming in terms of sequestering carbon, mitigating heat island effects, supporting our urban forest, maintaining walkability, and those issues. And I think that's it. So thank you so much for letting me share about our program.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Okay, so our next presenter is Matt Davenport, who's a graduate from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He's the Chief Encouragement Officer for Monarch Environmental, Inc. Monarch is a third-party horticulture consulting company focusing on water management, contract management, urban forestry, and project management. Matt is a nationally recognized leader in the field, and his passion for people and plant has led to multiple industry-moving initiatives. So thanks for being with us, Matt, and I'll turn it to you.
All right, thank you so much for having me. One thing that's stuck out to me already is that there's such a variety of solutions that everybody's bringing up, and I think it's going to take all of those solutions to make this happen. So I wrote down some notes because anybody that knows me knows I can just talk. So if I'm looking down, you'll know why. But today I want to talk about a landscape optimization service, or what we refer to as LOS, and you can go to the next slide. Really, what in my experience and in this, more importantly, this program, that large commercial and multifamily landscapes are disproportionately landscaped with turf grass. And why is that? Is because turf sells homes. And so you saw that from previous decades. And then we also see that the lowest level of participation in landscape incentive programs are also oftentimes on these commercial landscapes. We saw this in the county of San Diego. In the last 8 years, residential applications far outpaced commercial. And what I mean by commercial, to be clear, would be like homeowners associations and large landscapes like that. But they outpaced residential landscape applications 5 to 1. The challenge is that the result was that the commercial renovations produced 2 to 3 times the benefit. And I'll talk about that in a second. So larger landscapes, less applicants, but much larger, 2 to 3 times the benefit as the residential applicants that are 5 to 1. So why aren't they participating? In these homeowner associations, the customers have a complex decision-making process. There's different stakeholders, there's landscape committees, there's boards of directors, there's landscapers. It's sort of a bunch of different agendas. And I like to say this, but there's nothing really more emotional in these landscapes than turf and trees. And most of these people will say, well, we moved in here because of the turf. So that's sort of the landscape of what I want to talk about. In terms of the landscape optimization service, you see our funding partners and implementing partners, but here's the process that's been really successful. It starts with signing a participation agreement. We do a site assessment, a landscape design, and you can kind of work down through that path ultimately to get verification and get that money. I think the key to this program thus far is identifying those hurdles and then overcoming those with clear objectives, with design. And I'll show you an example of that on the next slide. Okay, so here's a good example of one of the communities that was renovated. You see the design in the upper right corner. Because turf's so emotional and because people just love having it around them, oftentimes where things get the big hiccups is they don't have a clear understanding of what it's going to look like. I've seen people get really excited when their turf is taken out. So having a really clear design, providing that technical assistance, and then producing the results based on the dollars available. But in this particular association, this was 37,000 square feet transformed. 90% of this project was covered by rebates, and more than 90,000 rebates was received. Estimated reduction in water use 75%. And then the estimated savings cost is $200,000 over 10 years. So the key again is another hurdle that we wanted to eliminate through this, and that was educating these participants on not just the cost of water, but that you can beautify the community, but also identifying the cost of labor. The average labor is going to, in California, cost $65,000 a year now, based on minimum wage and the burden. And so when you start presenting those numbers with water and the fact that you can turn a negative asset or a liability into a positive asset, something that is becoming a pollinator and something that adds value to your community, you start running those numbers and it really becomes sort of a no-brainer for them. But I did want to comment, just because I've been doing this for over 20 years, that working with these landscapes is sort of hand-to-hand combat. You have to really work with these people. You have to have a champion on the landscape committee. You have to have a very clear understanding of where you're headed. So far in this pilot, and not just this community, we have 8 projects underway that we have removed and renovated and upgraded over 260,000 square feet of turf, resulting in 35 acre feet of water a year savings. It's a proven model for incentivizing volunteer removal of turf. And local agencies are looking to expand to the full San Diego County and other counties in the Santa Ana watershed. Lastly, the messages that I would really want to make clear is that a financial incentive is not enough to overcome the barrier with these commercial customers. You could put out there a lot of money, but because it's so emotional and because that's the reason they moved in, it's just not enough. You have to have a project champion. You have to be committed to really over communicating. And that's what this project has done, or this program is we really help them sell it internally, make decision and maintain momentum. Multiple programs can make things confusing for owners and their contractors. So we bring a diverse programs together into a one-stop shop and reduce the burden for property owners. So we make it easy. And then landscapers, because they're landscape contractors, oftentimes when they present these programs, they're not fully trusted by the client or the homeowner. And so having that third party through technical assistance would reduce some of the risk and simultaneously build the awareness to go through this process. Lastly, because everybody's going to ask this question, what is the payback on something like this? It's in our experience through the LOS, the numbers come back at less than 2 years. So you've got a rising burden rate, rising water cost, and with the stacked rebates and items available in the process that's been created by the implementing partners, looking at a less than 2 years payback. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. That's great. And I see comments and questions in the chat that you can all look at, and we'll come back to a little bit of a discussion at the end of the presentation. Our next presenter is Joni German. Joni is a water resource specialist with the San Diego County Water Authority, the wholesaler for the region with 24 member water agencies. As part of the water use efficiency team, her responsibilities include developing, implementing, and managing innovative programs that meet the strategic goals of the Water Authority and its member agencies and advance water use efficiency throughout the San Diego region. Prior to the Water Authority, Joni spent 15 years with the city of Carlsbad, including 12 years managing conservation and public information programs. Thanks for being with us. Go ahead.
Thank you. Next slide. I'd like to talk a little bit about what's going on here in San Diego County in terms of encouraging multi-benefit sustainable landscapes in the CII sector. And building on the success that Matt just talked about, a little more about our efforts with the county, with MWD, and with financial assistance from DWR to provide higher rebates and increased technical assistance for commercial landscapes. Next slide. So here's the County of San Diego's Waterscape Rebate Program, and it has many elements, but one of the most important is the stacked incentives for CII and residential customers. And Matt mentioned that, you know, it's not all about the financial incentives, but it can certainly open the door. Stacked incentive programs are customer incentive programs co-funded by 2 or more entities to motivate voluntary behavioral change. Now, this isn't a new concept in the water industry. We've been doing this for years to offer programs that move the market. The Water Authority found out in the early 2010s that these partnerships can extend beyond the water world when we first partnered with the County of San Diego to encourage sustainable landscaping through rebates, technical assistance, and education. Through this Sustainable Landscapes program, the Water Authority and the county were able to identify distinctly different but mutually beneficial outcomes from coordinated actions. For example, encouraging upgrades to efficient irrigation not only saves water, but reduces dry weather runoff, a key goal for the county. Based on these mutual goals, we've expanded the partnership in a more meaningful way into a truly stacked incentive program. The county, the Water Authority, and the Metropolitan Water District have partnered on the Waterscape Rebate Program to fund and administer the stacked incentives you see here. The county has invested $4 million over 5 years to increase residential, commercial, and agricultural incentives in the unincorporated county areas. and to fund implementing partners such as Monarch Environmental Incentives, and Mission Resource Conservation Districts to provide the education and technical assistance that are key to delivering more equitable and successful landscape conversion projects. So you can see how meaningful these stacked incentives become when you look at a turf replacement project. And Matt mentioned that, the cost is initially a very daunting number for many property owners. So they can cost anywhere, a turf replacement project can cost anywhere between $4 and $10 per square foot. When we can offer $4 per square foot to take out turf and replace it with a sustainable landscape, we can start to see the market move. And because our turf replacement guidelines require stormwater capture, the county achieves additional dry and wet weather benefits. Next slide. Now is the time to take advantage of staffed incentives. As Art mentioned, new emergency drought regulations ban the irrigation of non-functional turf on CII sites across California. A recent study by the Pacific Institute found that the conversion of CII landscapes to more sustainable landscapes in California could save between 300 and 400,000 acre-feet of water per year. That's almost as much as the entire San Diego region uses annually. The ban represents a unique opportunity for California's water agencies to engage the business community through proactive drought response. The Pacific Institute study goes on to say that by transforming to more sustainable landscaping, businesses can contribute to immediate drought relief and long-term water resilience while achieving corporate sustainability goals, cutting costs, and providing additional community benefits. In just the first year of the Waterscape Rebate Program, the county has committed $4 million in incentives over 5 years, as I mentioned. Our co-funding partners have paid out at least $300,000 in incentive payments, and we've now engaged more than 750 properties. The result, we've secured nearly 700,000 square feet of grass treated through projects that are complete, under construction, or planned, projects that will reduce water use and dry weather flows into our storm drain system. Next slide. We believe this alliance of water efficiency and water quality is destined to succeed because it's grounded in multiple environmental benefits. So where are we going next? Well, we're going to focus on underrepresented communities. Our large landscape program will target sites that often face funding and community challenges similar to the ones Matt mentioned, sites like HOAs, churches, assisted living facilities, senior centers, and neighborhood parks. These are also projects that have the potential for huge quantifiable water savings. We're going to identify disadvantaged communities in need of turf, irrigation, and indoor plumbing retrofits and directly install them at no cost, thanks to a grant from DWR. We're going to engage a San Diego disadvantaged community in a showcase project to install green infrastructure developed through conversations with the community and using a local workforce trained specifically for the project. And again, paid for by grant funds from DWR. Thank you. And we're going to continue pursuing and developing partnerships across all natural resources in pursuit of climate resilience. Thank you.
Thank you, Joni. And our next speaker is John Whitcomb. John had been the executive director at Waterfluence over the last 20 years. Waterfluence partners with water suppliers to reduce overwatering at commercial and public landscape sites via monitoring, insights, and stakeholder connection. John enjoys growing grapes for a vineyard in Sonoma County and whitewater kayaking. And he holds a bachelor's in economics and geography from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and a PhD in geography and environmental engineering from the Johns Hopkins University. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Well, when DW reached out on topics that we find relevant to this workshop, there's really two. One was stakeholder connection, and that's really bringing together the account holder, the property manager, the owners, and the landscape contractors. We find about 99% of commercial sites are maintained by landscape contractors. So that's a really important topic, and Matt Davenport talked about that briefly, but that certainly is one of the a key element for success in landscape irrigation efficiency. And the other item that jumped to mind was controller maps, and that's what I was going to talk to briefly here today, just as a background, because it may have some relevance on the policy side to this group. So let me go ahead and, so yeah, you can go ahead and flip it over. So what is a controller map? A controller map, well, lucky we find about 25, a quarter to a third of sites don't have any maps available, but most have a basic controller map. And what that identifies is an area that will be irrigated when you turn on a particular controller zone. And most of these that we see are color coded, usually hand drawn, and there's usually one for each controller. Many of the commercial sites may have multiple controllers involved at them. So it's really, so I'll talk a little bit more about that, but this is what we would call a basic controller map. And as we go forward, the technology's really pushing what is available. So next slide shows what we would call an area controller map. And this is the next level. And this is just a screenshot from our website. And for sites that we're monitoring about 10,000 sites in the greater Bay Area and out into Sacramento region. And what we aim to do is to create a polygon for every zone that's available. And there's just a lot of tons of benefits that fall out of having this type of details available. So next slide. So as you really, if you are managing landscape at a site, you really must have a controller map. It really is it's almost more than a best management practice. It is just like it's a starting point. You just need a controller map. And why is because if you're going to actually set your controller, different zones at your controller, you have smart controllers or whatever, you need to have one to figure out what is coming on how much to irrigate each zone. So it's definitely needed for that. It's great when you can have then set different zones based on the types of plants you have. So if there's high water using plants, such as turf, or low water using plants, native landscapes, you want to be able to adjust each, the watering needs to each. And so that's the controller map really helps out. A point that we're seeing more and more as we see more turf conversion and the installation of drip is that it becomes even more critical to have a good controller map with drip, because it's not like you can turn on a rotor or a spray head and see if you turn on zone 15 where it's at. If it's all drip, it becomes a lot more difficult to remember where it is and what is actually being irrigated. So having the controller map really documents that. And part of that is we think that these controller maps need to be editable as you do replace the turf with other types of plants. We want to update the map. And what we also see all the time is that these maps are not surviving landscape or contractor turnover. So when one landscaper is replaced, they might just take the map and rip it up or throw it away, and the next landscaper's got to come in flying blind as in detritus management. And if there's a lot of drip sites, that becomes even more difficult of a task to know when you turn on a zone what is being irrigated. So that's something that we really like to see. And just like last here, I see the when you do have the areas of each zone, you can calculate the average, what we call precipitation rate, by dividing the flow by the area. And it gives you a measure, you can calculate it out. And whether you'd want to know, is this area being irrigated at 1/4 inch per hour, or is it 1 inch per hour? And it gives you, these are really basics that we need to have when we actually go out in the field and do evaluations at sites on how to improve the irrigation systems. You just need to have these metrics. So, that's my presentation. I would loop back and say there's possibilities here. There was talks about a lot about funding. Joni just mentioned the San Diego's programs that are there. I would throw out that possibly for people submitting to the program, perhaps they had to show at least submit a basic controller map as part of a condition on funding, because it really helps with the behavioral part of management that's after the installation of either equipment or change out in plants. You need to also pull in the behavioral part in order to make it work. We've seen in practice so many sites that has low water using landscapes that are over irrigated. So you really do need to bring in the people side of this for it to be successful. So that's my contribution, and so thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you, John. So our last speaker in this lightning talks that we're walking through is William Granger. William is the Water Conservation Coordinator for the City of Sacramento, and he has served in that position since early 2013. William has worked for a number of water retailers and water wholesaler, both in Northern and Southern California. Since joining the City of Sacramento, William has overseen the automation of AMI leak alerts and worked to dramatically expand the city's incentive program. So welcome, William, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Ari. Could you advance to the first slide? All right, so the City of Sacramento, we, as this particular chart shows, went very dramatically from 2013 when I started to 2016-17 to automate leak alerts, and this was during a rapid acceleration of our AMI installation in the city and meter installation in the city. Most of our leak letters go out to our single family and multifamily customers, but I wanted to talk today, or was asked to talk today, about opportunities in the CII sector with regard to leak alerts. So if you look on this particular chart, we're averaging about 15,000 letters. About 5% of those are going to our CII customers, and I'll show you a little bit later on who exactly I'm talking about. We could send out many more letters, but one of the things that we try to do is manage that so that we don't go insane with requests for leak investigations and leak assistance. We send out one leak letter to keep things straightforward with our IT folks. We send out one leak letter to all of our customer types, and basically tell them where those leaks typically occur. So let's go to the next slide, please. So the letter, and if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share that later on. We do have a 2-month automated cycle where if that leak shows up, depending on what our threshold is, a letter will be generated. And then 2 months later, if the leak threshold is still met, and sometimes we change it from 1 week to the next, they'll receive a follow-up letter, and then the cycle repeats. Right now, about half of our premise types that we have identified are receiving leak letters, and a lot of those are irrigation accounts. So parks, medians, irrigation only accounts, but also some other types of CII accounts, so more institutional accounts, so churches, cemeteries, mortuaries, and then some office buildings and warehouses are receiving our leak letters. Typically, because it's an irrigation account, or we'll set the leak threshold at around 3 days and about 600 or so gallons per day, and then a leak letter is generated. So it is going up pretty much automatically every 2 months. And again, about 5% of our letters are going out to our CII customers. They'll call in and request a leak investigation, or they'll go out and troubleshoot the issue. And oftentimes it is a leaking irrigation valve, or let's say it's an office building. Oftentimes it's something indoors as well. Let's see. So one of our limitations is we do not have email addresses. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of our challenges as well. We just send out the letters. Perfect scenario, we would have email addresses for everyone. So we're sending out letters. We do have a web portal as well, and we encourage all of our customer types to sign up for that. And they can set their own leak threshold, and that's a 24-hour notification instead of 3 days or 5 days or wherever we've set it. So we could go ahead and go to the next slide, Reed. So one other thing that we just started doing this spring, late winter, we were inspired by the city of Fresno and how they're using AMI. We decided to start targeting our patrolling for water misuse, both on the residential sector and also the CII sector. So we have about 1,600 irrigation only accounts. The map is showing basically the city is divided up into 3 different areas. And no, you can't see it too well, but it's telling us, and we also have a table that we get with this, where on this particular day, this was a Friday, a no water Friday, where in the city accounts appear to be watering. So basically anything over about 100 gallons per hour, we've tagged as irrigation. And then we have this map and addresses, and we can go out there and be proactive in our patrolling. So I know we are short on time. That's all I have for everybody. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, William. And we actually have some time to have a discussion with our presenters. And so just want to encourage participants to use the hand raise and get into a queue if you want to ask a question or share a comment based on what you heard. And maybe one way to start this conversation, all of your presentations have identified strategies and practices that are effective in reducing water use. And a key issue that I think there was a question early on, Krista, when you were speaking, and kind of, became a theme throughout, is that you can demonstrate the effectiveness, both in terms of water reduction, but also some of you talked about other benefits associated with the practices that you talked about. But ultimately, it's about getting buy-in. It's about outreach. It's the people factor that needs to be part of this conversation. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about the outreach, about developing the coordination and the partnerships that are necessary to do effective implementation of the programs that you talked about. And so since that question first appeared when Krista, you talked, maybe I can start with you. And if other want to chime in, that would be great. And any participant who wants to use the hand raise and participate in the discussion, would love to hear from you.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Orit. Metropolitan, we are so large and we are pretty far removed from the customer themselves. And so we are very lucky to have such great partnerships with our member agencies and their retailers, because they do a lot of that work and outreach for us. And so they're able to focus in on the commercial businesses that are in their area and do that kind of outreach and bring them to us, and so that we can put these partnerships together and these programs together. We also find them for a lot of the landscaping ones, the HOAs, those are businesses that come to us for our traditional rebates. And then we are able to expand that discussion and say, you know what, we have this program that we think would be a better fit for you. It helps to provide more funding for you if we can do a more holistic overview look of your property and the way that you use water. That's probably more beneficial than us just giving you a rebate for a controller or for a nozzle or something like that. And so a lot of that, it's a lot of back and forth and just finding that opportunity. We also have our large landscape surveys, and that's another in that we use. Those are free surveys that we do for large properties. So if they request one of those, that's another opportunity for us to start that conversation. So it's a lot of leveraging other programs that we have that are maybe more common, people understand or are looking for, and using that to open conversations for this tailored program that will get us more water savings.
Great. So there is the leveraging of other doors that you can go through to start a conversation. I also heard you talking about the education component of really understanding the impact. Great, thank you. Anybody else, our presenters, want to weigh in on this outreach partnership question?
Hi, this is Stephanie with Salt Lake City. So one of the things we did prior to beginning our turf program, and in fact, it's one of the ways we justified the program, is that we worked with Utah State University on a project using aerial imagery data sets, and then our water use data to identify what we're referring to as the capacity to conserve in our landscapes. From that, we were also able to ascertain a general or average square footage of lawn for our residential and commercial properties. And we've classified or categorized those properties in terms of the degree to which they're overwatering. So one of our outreach processes for our turf program will be direct contact with properties that have large areas of lawn that are being overwatered. So we'll be working with them to both install smart controllers, get water checks, which is another program we offer with Utah State University, and also encourage them to do the turf trade program. So by partnering both with Utah State University, the Turfgrass Water Conservation Alliance, and doing very deep analytics in specific parcel ratio on the parcel level of the ratio of water need to water applied, we're doing directed, targeted outreach to customers on our various conservation programming.
Great, thank you. Anybody else from our presenters before I go to our participants want to weigh in on the outreach question?
I was just gonna add, or it's Matt Davenport, but just to restate some of the things that John and Stephanie mentioned before, and all the presenters, but was that to have that champion, to have that person kind of boots on the ground to integrate these great programs is, in our experience, critical. It dramatically improves the turnover in terms of participation and overall satisfaction, because as you know, and I always tell landscape contractors this, but they get blamed for a bunch of stuff. They need to brag when something goes well. And when these conversions are done well, they talk to their surrounding neighbors and people start saying, oh, wow. And the climate right now in terms of drought and labor costs and all these things, it's really ripe to have it done well. So I think that's what I would just kind of want to continue that message. You really do need a champion on the ground to help sort of implement these things, because it is sort of hand-to-hand combat, as I mentioned before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so remembering that it's having those trusted messengers, the champions, those who can really make the connection, and you're making that distinction, not just messaging the need, but also really messaging and celebrating the successes so people can see that they're part of the solution as they're engaging with that. That's great. Thank you. So we can come back to that conversation. I think we can expand on it a little bit, but I see, Vicki, you have your hand raised. I want to give you an opportunity to comment or ask a question.
Hi, thank you so much for hosting. Just appreciate everyone here. My question is, so Vicki Riddle, Exeter Cemetery District Trustee, and my question is, are there any model cemeteries in any of the areas represented by the speakers that could be a resource for me? I think cemeteries are a big concern with turf replacement. I was interested in the type of blend of the grass. I think it was called wheat grass, or wheat blend, that only had to be watered once a month and mowed once a year. So we're trying to get in front of the ball here. Any suggestions or help?
Great question. Anyone wants to speak to that? I'm thinking, Matt, about you talking about that connection to grass with the homeowner association, that it's, you know, there's a connection to the grass that I can see that parallel when we're thinking about cemeteries. Any thoughts about that? Stephanie, you're off mute.
Yeah, also, I think she was asking about our crested wheatgrass that we mentioned that we're working with our golf courses. I think that could have great application at a cemetery. It is a bit clumpy. It's about 6 inches tall, but it does tolerate a great deal of foot traffic and golf carts and the periodic hacker. I'm happy to share my contact information and get you specific information about those varieties.
Awesome, thank you.
Great. Yes, and we'll include that in the meeting summary, the resources that are identified on the call today for others to have and benefit from. Any other comments or questions from our participants? Do you want to ask anyone?
I would like to make a quick comment. This is Mike Madewell with Granger Industries. Adding to what Matt Davenport had talked about as far as having a champion, I don't see a lot of interaction or purposeful community outreach to the property management company level. Because if you're working with individual landscape contractors, you're kind of singled into a cell, if you will, and the property management aspect, they're going to be covering multiple properties. And once you get in good with a certain property management level, they're going to have multiple properties that you could potentially branch out to and have a really big champion at that point in time. So again, just the property management level of communications and outreach is something I've not seen a lot of.
Thanks, Mike. I see there's a question from Kim Caldwell asking about the effectiveness of the San Diego County Regional Hotline. Any comments on that? Okay, and let's see, we have a couple of hand raises. We'll take comments or questions from Melanie and then to Neil. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this. I think my recommendation would be not only to have that support initially, but to have some follow-up over the first couple of years. You're usually pretty good after a couple of years, but these are changes in habit and acceptance, and people want to know if they're doing it right and if it's going well, and of course what the impact is on conservation. So I recommend having follow-ups with the technical assistance folks, so people know that they're going to have the check-ins. It also helps with the messaging out to other colleagues and neighbors and stuff. So building that into your budget and your program to have follow-ups. Thanks.
Melanie, can you tell us your affiliation?
Oh, sorry. I'm Melanie Winter with the River Project here in Los Angeles, and we spent the last 10 years focusing largely on residential work at this level.
Great, thank you for your comment. To Neil, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name properly.
You are, thank you.
And can you tell us who you're with before you provide your comment or question?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Tennille Otero. I'm with the Otay Water District. I'm our communications officer and conservation coordinator. I had a question, and actually I was looking for my email to see if I could find the specifics, but I don't know if any of you have this information. I know with some of what the state had requested or required was the CII not watering or not using turf. And I know that there were some exemptions with a lower ETF factor, and there was another exemption in there, and at certain types of grass. And we've been looking for that all over. So I'm just wondering, I mean, I know this kind of came up a little bit with some of the other turf, but I'm just wondering if there's a list out there, if any of you know what fits into that.
I'm wondering if that's a question to our presenters or to DWR staff who can speak to that.
Yeah, and I'm looking for my email because I have more specifics. I just can't find it right now.
Hi, this is Sabrina from DWR. That's a water board regulation, but I will look into see they're supposedly developing some facts that provide a little bit more explanation on some things. So let me see what I can find.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. And there was a question about how to raise a hand. So at your menu with the different icons, there is a menu of reactions, and in the reactions there is a hand raise for anyone who wants to speak in person. And let's see, we'll take a couple more. We'll take the 4 that we have right now, and then we'll go to a quick break, and then we'll have an opportunity for more discussion. So next we have Cora.
Cora Kameyer with the Pacific Institute. I had a question about opportunities for financing for these projects. I know we have some, funding through incentive programs. And as I think it was Matt who noted, these projects often have a payback period of under 2 years. And I think the upfront capital cost is a barrier for a lot of businesses and HOAs. And I was wondering for the speakers, if any of you have had experience with financing programs that help defray that upfront cost and allow users to pay back over time as the project becomes cost effective.
I can touch on that. Good comment, good question. So I'm not familiar with any outside source that a bank or someone like that has participated in funding a project like this. But there's really 2 buckets for homeowner associations. There's operating and reserve, and a reserve is something that's actually set aside for projects like this, and those reserve budgets have to be paid back over the course of a period of time. And so we've seen some communities work with their contractor to say, hey, would you be willing to stagger payments? Would you be willing to wait and kind of almost really finance through the landscape contractor? And based on the fact that these are often big wins for the contractor as well, that they're typically willing to work with them. That's most of what we've seen. I have not seen an outside source funding these projects.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So we'll track that question and see if there are additional answers to that. I'm going to take just one more question because we are at the 10:20 and we want to make sure that we get to our breakout. So really encouraging everyone who has their hand up to stay and continue the conversation after the short break. So Kim, go ahead and make your comment or question, and then we'll take a quick break.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you for everyone's time. Just as a citizen who does try to report major water leaks at businesses and, irrigation and that sort of thing, there are several water waste hotlines. I know there's a City of San Diego water waste hotline, and I'm just wondering if anyone knows, if those are really effective at taking calls and, taking reports, because trying to go to businesses with self-flush toilets or parking lot irrigation leaks can be really confrontational as a customer or, a member of a gymnasium to try to get the management to fix a leak. So it's obviously more effective if, the county or city is able to fine or, expect a business to fix the leak. So I was just wondering how effective those hotlines are. And if nobody really knows, that might be a sign that they're not that effective. And I think that the effectiveness of those hotlines could really help the entire state manage all these leaks that just hemorrhage water.
Well, Kim, I can't speak to the effectiveness of the hotlines themselves, but I can speak to why a partnership between the water efficiency agencies and the stormwater runoff agencies is so important, because here in San Diego County, sometimes those are the same agencies. So City of Escondido manages stormwater and water. Other times they're separate. So, and the boundaries are overlapping. So what we're doing here in San Diego is bringing together these different parties, the water use efficiency agencies and the water quality water management agencies to bring together their resources and find those targeted areas, those areas of impact that will benefit from our joint programs. And that's something we're just starting to do. We're going to be kicking off our community of interest process this fall, and we're looking, because we've heard from cities that they've got stormwater runoff issues when they're patrolling at 4 a.m. at these corporate parks, and they see all this runoff, but they don't know that there are water conservation programs that can benefit them and can help with this runoff. So by bringing the two sides together, we hope to find more of these properties and address more.
Thanks, Joni. All right, so thanks everyone. Really appreciate all the comments and questions and resources that are being shared. We're going to take a quick stretch break, and we'll reconvene at 10:30, and we're looking forward to having more direct conversations with each other and hearing more from you. Thank you, and thank you to our presenters for great presentations and sharing information. Really appreciate it. Thank you all. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for staying on for this part of our meeting today. We're really looking forward now to having time for you all to get together in small groups and have more conversations, and then, of course, report back. And so just as a reminder, the 4 key strategies that Art early on identified, the 4 are functional conventional turf conversion to climate appropriate efficient turf, non-functional turf replacement with drought tolerant landscaping, indoor CII fixture replacement, and training and technical assistance. And of course, acknowledging that there are other strategies. And so things like leak detection, innovative pilots, we want to hear from you about a thing. So as you get into this conversation, we hope you bring into these conversations success stories and lessons learned from your work, challenges that you've come across, as well as solution to really making sure that these programs are accessible and you're able to reach underrepresented communities and tribes. What do you see as important trends that you want to highlight? So really want to have a chance for you to be sharing your knowledge with DWR and also with each other. So we've identified 3 key questions that we want to hear from you about. One is, how can DWR ensure effective implementation of identified strategies? What are some of the challenges, lesson learned, and specifically supporting underrepresented communities and tribes to promote accessibility to these strategies? So one is about implementation. The second is we want to add to this toolbox, so what other strategies can be implemented specific to the CII sector. And the third is, as we had just discussed before the break, really thinking about outreach, messaging, and collaboration strategies. What should be identified and promoted to make sure that we see the implementation of these strategies. So these are the 3 questions. And, we have limited time together, so please make sure that in your conversation, depending on the group that you're with, identify the questions that are most relevant to your experience and focus on those. You may touch on all 3 or may focus on 1 or 2 of the questions. That's fine. We just want to get your input here. So here's a little bit of our breakout instruction. You have about 40 minutes for this conversation, starting with introductions and logistics in your group. So identify someone who can be the facilitator, just very light touch to make sure that everybody is participating in the discussion and weighing in. We want to hear from all of you. Someone who's a timekeeper, because we want to make sure that everyone is concise and that you are addressing the questions that are relevant to you. And so have someone kind of just be mindful of the time. And we really need a note taker, someone who can use the template that we have created. And I put the link to the folder in the chat. I'll do that again. But we want to make sure that you're tracking the ideas and the conversation since the breakouts are not recorded. We're really relying on you to track the information that you're hearing in discussion. So please do that. And then once you've kind of done the logistics and quick introductions, then dive into the conversation. Whichever of the three questions, any of all that you want to talk about, you have about half an hour to do so. And then at the end, make sure that you just give yourself about 5 minutes to just kind of step back from the conversation, identify the key points that you discussed, and wrap up your conversation. So just a suggested mini agenda for your breakout. And again, I put the link in the chat, and this link is to a folder. And when you get to the folder, you will see that there is a whole bunch of Word document, template 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And so for breakout number 1, make sure you use template 1. If you're group 2, you know, it corresponds to the breakout. So this way, everybody can be on the same page. I enabled sharing, so you should be able to share your template with everyone or take notes on the side, whatever works for you. If you don't want to use the template, that's okay. If you want to just take your own notes and then just email it to me after the meeting, that works as well. And I'll give you instructions as well. So here we go again. I'm going to give you that link again to the folder. Okay, and I think that's it. We have about 189 participants now on the call, and that includes our presenters and DWR staff, and I'm inviting everyone to participate. And with that, I'm going to create our breakouts and send you off. Before I do, is there any question? If you can raise a hand if you have a question before we go into it. We have, let's see, how much time do we have? We need to be back by 11:20. So that's when we are going to do the report out. So if you are going to track time, 11:20 is when we are going to return. Yes, please stay in this Zoom. You're going to get an invitation. This is going to be, it's creating the room right now. I'm going to open it, so you'll get an invitation to a room, and you just go into join. Here we go. Thank you all, and I hope you have a really good conversation.
Being recorded.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had good conversations with each other, with lots of opportunities to learn, and that you were able to track your ideas on the templates. I checked in with several of the breakouts, and it looks like everybody was able to access it and use the template. So really appreciate everybody stepping into these conversations and supporting in different ways. So what we want to do is, first I'm going to wait just a couple more seconds to make sure everybody's back with us. Looks like people are still coming back from their groups. All right, so thanks everyone. Thanks for staying with us and participating and joining the conversation. What we wanted to do in the last half an hour or so of this meeting is really to just harvest some of the information, some of your ideas, your thoughts about these 3 key questions. And so the way we were going to do the report out, just somewhat informally, is just go question by question. And if a particular question was something that your group focused on, if you could just use the hand raise, which is in the reaction menu, and I'll just call on you and would love for you to just kind of share for each of the, for the question that we're focusing on, what was your discussion like and what ideas came up? Were there any themes that emerged from your conversation, areas where you all, you know, identify something as, yes, this is really an issue that is shared by many, or were there lots of different experiences that shows for the diversity of our state? So looking forward to seeing what you all have to say. And the report out doesn't have to be limited to whoever you've identified. If there are additional ideas and thoughts, feel free to share them. And I'll just spend about 7 to 10 minutes for each question so we can get your thoughts on it. And it's an opportunity as we're doing this report out to really build on ideas and expand. So the first question has to do with effective implementation of identified strategies. So we're asking you to, what are the challenges, lesson learned from given the work that you're doing based on your experience. And as we're thinking about those challenges and lesson learned, really wanting to focus on how we can be successful in supporting underrepresented communities and tribes in effort to promote accessibility to conservation strategies. So I'll start with this implementation question, and this really speaks to those 4 strategies that we have identified early on. Anyone wants to start our conversation? Go ahead, Joni, and then we'll go to Claire.
Okay, thank you. So I had a really good group. We had a really good discussion, and I'm going to attempt to make my notes into sentences. So how can DWR ensure the effective implementation of identified strategies? So one of the challenges that was identified by many of the speakers was that funds just aren't available for some communities to pay for upfront costs for major renovations. So we were hoping DWR could assist with low or no interest loans to fund those upfront costs. And to help with outreach engagement, to get in front of the public, to facilitate conversations about non-functional turf and about making these renovations. And let's see, agencies have limited staff, so we need DWR's assistance reaching out to CII owners and explaining to them, you know, how they qualify for incentives. And then communications and effective messaging. HOAs are difficult and a lot of energy is spent with little outcome. So ensuring that the message that we're all in this together and we're doing this for a greater good is sent statewide. Mm-hmm. And then for ways to support underrepresented communities and tribes, we decided that engagement with DACs is very important, especially like multifamily DACs,
to get an understanding of how they use their outdoor spaces, get their buy-in and input, and then just provide direct install projects using state funding. And those projects are more likely to be successful and then turn into demonstration projects or showcase projects that hopefully the copycat effect will occur. And then for schools, we consider, no, they're not underrepresented, but I think they're aren't a lot of implementation projects in schools because they don't have the funding. Water agencies are challenged to help them because we have to deal with them individually as districts. And so we were wondering if DWR could promote a statewide effort to upgrade indoor plumbing in schools and in other public institutions.
Great, thank you. I hear a theme of having kind of a state framework to support community. And you talked about the communication and the outreach and the messaging, and then the issue related to funding and providing some ideas. Thank you very much. Claire, you're next.
Yeah, hi. We had a good idea about needing assistance with reaching out to large corporations within California. For example, if the state had time to be able to reach out to like large corporate hotel chains and provide them with one streamlined rebate program or assistance to save water at their property, as opposed to each one of us 400 water utilities reaching out to, an individual, say, hotel or franchise in our service area, and then trying to get one person involved, and they really have to run it up through the corporate ladder to get, corporate approval. And then if they want to participate somewhere else in California, the program requirements are different. And so just having that barrier of eliminated of different program requirements and having assistance with reaching out to the corporate level would be really helpful for us. So that was one good idea, I think, that came out of our group. Another good idea that was talked about is leak detection, especially around leaking toilets. Although we have many efficient appliances or fixtures in our service area, which is great. From the many years of drought, people have been, encouraged to replace their fixtures, which is great, but then the fixtures still leak. So really encouraging checking for leaks in toilets, especially in the CII sector. Providing free dye tabs would be essential. And so again, just having a statewide campaign on checking your toilets for leaks, really targeting plumbing companies, as well as like property management companies, HOAs, sort of the larger players in California, and just encouraging them to check for leaks. All right. And then, Arit, where do you want us to upload these notes? There's not a way that we can upload them on the Google Docs.
Well, if you are using it on the Google Doc, then it should all be there. Otherwise, I will put an email in the chat and you can just send it to the email. But if you were typing into the Google Doc, it should all be there with your comments.
I couldn't because it's a PDF. It wouldn't let me open as an editable document, but maybe that was just me. So happy to email it. And if you send an email, thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you for the ideas. So building out on what we heard, Jack, you're next, and then Robert, and we have a few more hands up.
Thank you. Thank you. Really, one of the things that we have seen as we've looked at that in our group is there's a lot of confusion, especially in municipalities that have multiple water districts, and there have been, or multiple water providers, and there's been a challenge about getting that messaging to line up. And so the idea of what DWR can do is create a sort of a one-stop portal that allows people to find who their water provider actually is by putting in their zip code, or it'll pin them, and then maybe funding some sort of Save Our Water campaign specifically for CII customers, and adopting guidance and water saving information, being able to provide guidance around what is water efficient turf, and then what is the data that backs that up? How do they support that? how can we say this is the water savings we can anticipate, and maybe do some sort of ROI on conservation program calculator. The challenge around accessing tribes was really identified as being a relationship and sort of a disjunct approach between the water service area and the tribe itself and their conservation efforts. And so maybe the state can help with that that relationship building. I don't know if that would again be through a central message or not.
Mm-hmm.
But those are, you know, and maybe finding a way to make conservation more appealing to the CII, maybe a recognition program where the state would say, hey, look at these commercial, and basically it's like a free advertising where they would call out commercial customers for their conservation efforts. That is one of the things that came away.
Great, thank you. I think that's the idea of recognition builds on what we talked earlier about really celebrating successes and kind of owning the progress being made. And again, adding to the importance of having resources and support and messaging and outreach. Robert, you're next, and then we have Shelley and Bryce. I think that's the order it's showing up for me. So let's take these three, and then we'll move to the next question. Go ahead, Robert.
Okay, yeah, so as far as challenges, we identified that loans were like kind of an area that we wanted to move into or think about, is removing a barrier as far as money available to upfront money available to do these programs like large turf removal programs. So questions about loans, and especially for HOAs, learning how that works with an HOA. Who approves that? Not the property manager, or is it the board, or is it actually a vote of everybody in the HOA? So, you know, understanding, you know, how that choice gets decided and how simple that is. We also discussed, talked about these stacked rebates, and that gets into the question of, are we paying for more than what it's costing? So understanding what that means to each agency involved. If we're potentially, you know, paying more money, do we need more in-depth receipts and accountability? And what does that mean to us? We talked about, you know, if we're doing these statewide programs or having the state DWR help us or provide information, you know, providing standards and consistency across, especially interior information. We talked about back in the 90s, providing cut sheets on different, you know, for restaurants, for different uses, end uses. And we found that very valuable. And now going forward with our 19 different categories, if DWR could create cut sheets on those, going to water agencies, looking for, you know, actual things that have happened, and then using that to create cut sheets would be great. As far as agencies working with the underrepresented communities, we were talking about getting an understanding, if you're a wholesaler, what cities or the people you provide water to, what are their capacity to actually implement these programs that you're creating? Are your programs only being taken up by a few of the cities and not by all of them? And then what are those barriers? Is it, you know, is it the income of the, you know, that the city has, and finding ways to get participation from those cities that are less advantaged in financially. We didn't have any discussion about the tribes, but probably the same idea is you understand you're going to need to put more effort into that because there's probably less money available for them to implement your programs that you're providing for them. That's it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think the point around aligning programs with the resources available to communities is an important one. Shelley, you're next.
Yeah, so we talked about similar things with other groups. Some of the challenges that we experienced were that with CII, getting participation is just a lot more challenging than we've experienced with some of our residential rebates and services, mainly because depending on where you are in the state and what your service area is like, who your CII customers are can really vary. So it's hard to have targeted programs. Another challenge that we've experienced is that for areas that where non-functional turf's been removed and replaced with drought-tolerant landscaping, having landscapers or staff available that knows how to weed and is willing to weed versus mow is a challenge. So then it becomes, some of these conversions become eyesores on that CII space, as well as we were anxious about that transition from the functional turf to more climate adapted turf of just, will that same issue apply? Do we have the right folks that know how to program systems? Is it going to change when new landscapers are hired or new staff is hired? And you overwatering is already happening on non-functional turf, so that the worry about climate adapted turf would that same apply. But we had, and the last of our challenges was, that statewide regulations that are a blanket approach are really challenging. We had water districts from the south and the north and from big towns and small towns. And so all of us had very different responses and challenges. So allowing for local adaptation is really helpful. Some of the ideas that we shared were that things that have been helpful for us in the past is advertising savings of different conversions. And that if DWR could help on water savings from various different types of conversions, that could be really helpful. We've also seen success by partnering with our electric or gas utilities in our service areas on some of these free rebates and services to help try to lower the costs. And then for the underrepresented communities, that, a big challenge is that renters are not able to take advantage of some of the programs, and that the out-of-town property owners are often non-responsive. And so we really support what a prior group had mentioned of trying to figure out how to get those direct install projects specifically for underrepresented communities, DACs, tribes, etc. And I think that's the main takeaway for our group.
Great, thank you. I think something that you brought up to this conversation was the issue of having the landscaping expertise that you can rely on to do things properly, and the issue of local adaptation and cost associated with that. So great comments. And Bryce, you're next. Thanks, Shelley.
Thank you for the opportunity here. This is coming from group number 9. Just to touch on a few of the turf conversion issues there. We're looking at DWR to provide funding for organizations like CalWEP or other agencies or other organizations like that to standardize the approach for turf conservation in all CII accounts. We understand that the cost impact is challenging as well. So the ideas of loans or additional funding would be helpful there too. On that same topic there, there are several different methods to remove turf and replace it. And in that removal, we often see the use of herbicides and potential harmful topsoil treatments and topsoil removals. So if there is a low impact design, LID or VILD standard that DWR can help provide and share with organizations, that would be extremely helpful. Looking at some indoor fixture replacements to really focus there is on low income housing and disadvantaged communities. Looking for DWR to provide funding for direct install programs, especially for HET. Community outreach is the thing that our group talked about quite a bit, and I'll mention that a bit later here. But community outreach is crucial there. Another thing that we really focused on was processed water for water utilities or for commercial and industrial processed water. There is not a whole lot of resources right now, labor resources to manage that appropriately. So we're hoping that DDR can help qualify things like AMI in lieu technology for CCI accounts for that processed water, and also consider funding for submarine for that processed water as well. Overarching topics really we talked about here is lessons learned is that, I think there's a lot of great lessons learned, but there's no one consolidated space to kind of share that all as a statewide community. So DDWR, we'd like DDR to consider creating that consolidated space where we can have lessons learned and share that and have that conversation. Going back to community and a community-based approach, we were talking about programs run by the state versus programs run in community, and community programs are accepted at a greater rate and participated in it at a higher rate. So looking for DWR to create opportunities and funding to support community-based owned and managed approach for both turf conversions and fixture conversions and things like that, but really looking at that community-based approach. Last thing I really want to mention here, I know there's a lot more, I'm sure I forgot a lot, but when we're looking at strategies that we can implement to conserve water in the sector, really it's through codes and standards. So it's modifying the Green Building Code and modifying either Title 23 or Title 24, incorporating these standards and practices into the documents that our landscape architects, designers, and engineers and plan checkers all reference to pass drawings along and to develop drawings and projects. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the comments. Adding to what we've heard, but also some of the issues around unintended consequences, thinking about impacts of practices, thinking again about having a place to get information, and so having that consolidated space that you mentioned, and potentially codifying some of these practices. Appreciate all the different thoughts. Cora, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks. Just wanted to share from our group. I'll try not to repeat what others have said, but although there were some similar themes that came up in our group around the role of the state in playing this, centralized location for helping water users figure out what opportunities there are for water savings, how to access incentive programs or other sorts of either direct support or financial support. So definitely just reiterating that. One thing our group talked about was the idea of a sort of like award or recognition program for CII best practices in water conservation, that could be something that the state could play a role in. When it came to thinking about supporting underrepresented communities, we talked about the need for a turnkey program and perhaps enhance incentives for specific communities that not only is decreasing the cost barrier, but also decreasing kind of the just access and logistical barrier and the time that it takes to access these programs. And just noting this risk that if lower income or underrepresented communities aren't able to easily access the programs, they end up with higher water use and then higher water bills, and this contributes to this water affordability challenge. Someone in our group also noted a program with SoCal Edison that facilitated both energy and water upgrades at the same time. So I think that's coming back to the theme of stacked incentives and possibilities of not only looking at different types of water related programs, but also working with energy programs. Our group also talked about financing and the need for financing and helping to defray that upfront capital cost of projects in order to increase uptake. And then in terms of outreach and collaboration, we talked about, and we've heard here, the need to share success stories, and specifically the state could help facilitate peer-to-peer learning and having folks actually go out and see demonstration projects or successful implementation projects on properties that are similar to theirs. And this helps with being able to actually visualize what success looks like, and also build trust when you can see peers in investing in these kinds of projects.
Great, great summary of some of the comments we've heard, and definitely themes that are showing up. So As you can see from your report out, even though we had these like 3 distinct questions, they're all very much interrelated and linked to each other. To do effective implementation, you need to be able to collaborate and outreach and educate, and it provides, as you identify challenges, it provides for other strategies to help address some of the challenges. So I just want to open it up and see if anybody else has any thoughts on additional strategies, anything innovative or out of the box, or ideas that you're thinking about that can be added to our toolbox that you'd like to suggest. All right, great. So we have Bevin, and I'm hoping I'm saying your name correctly, and then Cooper following on that.
Hi, thank
yes,
you.
Please share your name and affiliation so we just know your perspective.
Hi, so my name is Bhavin, and I work with GHD. We are an engineering consulting firm, and what I do is data analytics. So any kind of numbers that you have, I love to take numbers into consideration and give out. The idea is to find the hidden trends, and my background is water. My undergrad, my master's were in water, and my PhD was in data analytics. So it's good to have that combination of domain knowledge and statistical analysis. My question is more on the lines of using all these data analytics that we see in all the other areas, and I've applied them for a county in Northern California to compare different water conservation programs, and we were able to connect that with demographics, not only the perspectives of environmental justice, but some more other perspectives as well. And then also connected to whether and identify the programs that were really suited for a particular community and go down to literally block group level. So is there a interest in using that kind of analytics and develop a statewide portal that would serve as a platform so that one community can learn from what the other community has done on and find the relevance, like maybe neighboring communities can learn from each other. So that's a question I have.
Mm-hmm. And I'm hearing from many of those who reported on their group discussion that have identified the desire for some kind of centralized place for information. I heard that in several of the report outs. Cooper, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah, hi, Cooper Reeves with Contra Costa Water District. So I'll do my best to report out what our room number 14 discussed. As far as we really kind of didn't get too much into 2 and 3, but we did discuss 1 and went through A, B, C, D, and E to some degree. So some of the I guess key highlights that we had, would be helpful to have maintenance guides to climate appropriate plants and turf grass. We said that CalWEP has a guide, Quell and Rescape landscape certification programs could be promoted a little bit more. We also discussed providing more education for landscape designers and installers, and then also this need for on the maintenance side, there's just a general lack of understanding of how to maintain these landscapes. So providing a better education and helping out with already like Quell or Rescape helping out with those systems or introducing additional training opportunities. We discussed potentially, increasing MWELO compliance, as an option. For direct installation, turf conversion, we think that it would be really great to have like a cost sharing program with agencies that already have direct install programs. And for those that don't, it would be great to have a state direct install program, potentially combined with, a cost sharing model as well. And DWR to kind of maybe take after what CalWEP is doing with some of their programs where particular utilities can participate. I think one of the bigger things that I think everyone's been discussing is that, these projects take, usually have a payback of over 10 years. They're the most expensive as far as lawn, transforming the landscape, replacing lawn, putting in low water use gardens, over 10 years, 10, 15 years to pay back. And commercial customers want a 2-year payback period. Like, they don't even go for that usually. But for any of our like interior or landscaping, but having a statewide funding program would really help. I think PACE falls short, unfortunately. It's for profit, and the financing rates are pretty high. So if I was a business, I wouldn't really be incentivized to want to use that as a resource. So yeah, the financing is a big one. And I think that's, direct install programs are just really expensive. We can only say that there's so much we can contribute to a particular program. And that's really basically our rebate amount. We couldn't pay for the complete direct install, but the customer would have to share the majority of the cost. So then otherwise, I guess we talked about, at least for 2, we said certification could be required for landscaping maintenance for at least for CII customers. And then, yeah, we touched on having a one-stop shop in relation to, what DWR could do to help out. And then we talked about a CII, like Save Our Water webpage to kind of help bring CII customers to public agencies. And then for 3, as far as outreach, I guess the state could further promote the Green Business Network and increase followers to the Save Our Water website. Definitely showcasing successes, I think, would be really great. Case studies and all of that. And the question came up of, at least for the interior components for CII, where does SB 407 come in, which basically mandates and requires that all interior fixtures be upgraded for CII anyway. Are we gonna really do direct installs? Are we gonna do rebates for that? Or do you increase compliance with SB 407? And if you do that, then how do you support businesses to make the conversion? And I think that's, again, where financing comes in.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Cooper. Really appreciate the recap of your conversation. We're just about at the end of the meeting. William, you have your hand up, so I'm going to give you just a quick minute to follow up, and then I'm going to turn it over to DWR to close the meeting.
Sure. Last but not least, group 16. So I was the facilitator for that particular group, and don't want to cover things already covered, but I will just share that we spent a lot of time talking about direct install programs. And there are a number of groups or number of agencies that were in our group that are looking to start up like a rotating nozzle install program or rebate program. So there were a lot of folks that are just getting started with programs. So we did talk about potentially DWR having a state-run program, how that could be a benefit. So I know one of the other groups talked about community-based programs, but there's huge value to an economy of scale having a state-run direct install program. So we started to talk about that. And some of the challenges that we talked about, and this may have been covered by other groups, but just the challenges in trying to put together lists of property managers and landscape contractors. And we didn't have any answers there, but just we discussed it as a group, it being a challenge. So I'll stop there in the interest of time.
Great, thank you very much. And again, really looking forward to going through all the templates with your notes and kind of coalescing it and seeing what are the themes that emerge from our conversation. And of course, we will be sharing that with you as well as the recording. I think early on somebody asked about that. So I'm going to turn it over to Arthur Hinojosa, who started us today, to just help us close the meeting.
Thanks, Ori. And I just want to say a very heartfelt thank you to everybody who participated today. Wow. I sat in on one of the groups and lively participation, excellent ideas, considerations, information exchanged. I can't imagine it was anything less than all the other groups. As you might imagine, with all those groups, there's a lot for us to digest. So our next steps include digesting it all. I mean, the summaries, recordings, that'll be easy. Summarizing everything and digesting it into how we put forth and refine our strategies will take a little bit more time. Funding came up a lot. As I mentioned in my remarks this morning, the department does have funding being available to it to support water conservation. We expect we will be using all this input to help guide how we avail this, along with other drought funding. For the grant parts of it, we expect to have our urban grant for drought and conservation on the streets in terms of a PSP and guidelines for public review this fall. It's probably early as September is our current striving. It's going to be hard pressed to do it, but that is our current plan. So from a next step from you all, look at it. Does it get at what you hope it to get at? We can't do everything. And some things, of course, from what I've heard, we could get 10 times the amount and still have our work cut out for us. But we'll do our best to put forth a proposal that works for as many folks as we can and get the most bang for our buck. So again, thank you all very much for your participation today. And good luck with all your endeavors to help us all conserve water across the state. Very much appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you to all the presenters and those who reported on behalf of the breakout discussion. Really appreciate everyone's participation. Have a good day.